The ridge beam gave a low wooden groan as I leaned into the socket wrench and tightened the final lag bolt. Outside the cabin windows, the cascades had disappeared. Snow moved sideways across the glass in a solid white sheet, driven hard enough by the wind to make the new panes tremble in their frames. The wood stove thermometer sat just under 400 degrees, but cold still crept through the unfinished great room and settled into my knuckles. I checked the connection one more time, marked the torque value in my logbook, and had just reached for my jacket when someone hammered on the front door. Not wind. 3 sharp knocks, a pause, then 3 more. I crossed the subfloor, opened the deadbolt, and caught the door before the gust could rip it from my hand. A woman stumbled over the threshold in a navy parka crusted with ice. Snow clung to her hair and lashes. I braced the door with my shoulder, shoved it closed, and slid the bolt home. For a second, neither of us spoke. The storm thudded against the timber walls. The wood stove ticked as hot iron expanded. Her breathing came in short, controlled pulls while she worked feeling back into her fingers. "You Caleb Hayes?" she asked. "I am." She reached inside her parka and pulled out a waterproof folio. "Olivia Reed. State Building and Safety Commission. Phase 3 structural audit." Her teeth clicked once before she pressed her jaw tight. I pointed toward the stove. "Stand near the heat, not against it. I need to tell you something before we start." "Start with whether you're hurt." "I'm not hurt." She glanced at the white wall beyond the window. My car slid into the ditch below the switchback. I walked the last mile. That made the permit in her hand less important than the ice melting from her cuffs. "No plow is scheduled before Monday," I said. "If the storm holds, it could be Tuesday. The lower road is already drifting shut, and your car isn't getting out without a tow." "I know." She looked down at the folio, then back at me. "The audit deadline is Sunday at noon. If Phase 3 isn't signed by then, your commercial permit lapses and the project goes into suspension. Saturday afternoon, less than 20 hours. She kept going before I could answer. "My regional supervisor, Grant Mercer, sent me up here expecting a shutdown-level violation. He put it in writing that he wants a major finding on this site. And he told me the senior promotion will go to someone else if I come back with a clean report." That was the first thing she said that warmed the room less than the stove. "You have that message?" I asked. "On my satellite terminal." She tapped the weatherproof case clipped inside her bag. "Text-only connection. It works when the sky gives it a clear enough window." I set my jacket back on the peg. Olivia was stranded on my job site in a blizzard. That made her safety my responsibility, whether she approved the cabin or condemned it. The audit mattered too. I had spent 14 months building the frame, and a fair inspection was the only clean way to protect the permit. Helping her was not a favor I could trade for a signature, and I had no intention of trying. "Then we do this in the right order," I said. "You get warm. After that, you inspect anything you can reach safely. I'll show you every document you ask for. You decide the report." Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she'd expected an argument. "You're not going to ask me what Grant wants to hear?" "No." "You're not going to ask me to make the deadline disappear?" "No." The corner of her mouth moved, not quite a smile. That is unusually refreshing. "I'm a timber framer. We prefer loads that travel in straight lines." That earned a small breath of laughter. I filled a ceramic mug from the thermos on the temporary kitchen counter and dropped in a tea bag. "Drink this." She took it with both hands. "Is this part of the inspection protocol?" "It is now." The warmth from the mug began clearing the color from her fingertips, while she stood by the stove. I checked her folio against my own binder and pulled the approved site plan from a plastic sleeve. "Before we go farther," I said, "this is the property classification sheet. Main residence is permanent. Generator shed is listed here as temporary construction storage. Different load standard, different permit category." She read the note, then initialed the margin of her working copy. "You expect me to care about the shed?" "I expect weather to make something inconvenient before Monday." "That sounds like experience." That sounds like a mountain. Her satellite terminal gave a muted chirp from inside her bag. Olivia froze for half a second before setting down the mug and checking the screen. I could not see the message, but I saw what it did to her. Her shoulders stiffened. Her thumb hovered over the reply field, then stopped. "Grant?" I asked. "Yes." "What does he want?" She looked at me for a long moment, then turned the screen so I could read one line. "Do not come back without a material violation." Below it sat another message. "Director role depends on judgment under pressure." Olivia locked the screen. "There," she said. "Now you know exactly what I'm walking into." I slid the site plan toward her. "Then your best protection is a report nobody can bend." She studied me, then the drawing. "Show me the western roof elevation." The audit began. From inside the great room, she checked post alignment, beam connections, temporary bracing, window headers, and the visible sections of the upper loft. She moved fast without rushing. And she asked better questions than most inspectors I had worked with. At the western wall, she stopped under the slope of the roof. "The plan set in my office says 1212. "Original plan," I said. "It was amended to 1012. That changes the snow shedding calculation." "It does. Where is the engineer's approval?" "Section 4, tab B." She flipped through the binder, found the stamped amendment, and ran a finger across the signature. "Marta Lynn," she said, "County Structural Engineer." She reviewed the revised load table and connection schedule. Olivia compared the numbers against her worksheet. "And you increased the ridge support at the same time. 2 additional posts and a revised collar tie spacing?" She looked up into the exposed frame, following the load path with her eyes. "You did not have to increase both." "No." "Why did you?" "Because snow does not care what the minimum code says." For the first time since she entered, Olivia smiled without reservation. "Good answer." A crack like a rifle shot hit the eastern side of the cabin. The floor jumped under my boots. Olivia's smile vanished. I was already moving. "Stay here." What was it? Branch or ice impact? I grabbed the flashlight, crossed the hallway, and dropped the attic ladder. Cold air spilled down before I had the hatch fully open. That was enough to tell me something had broken. I climbed into the attic and swept the beam across the rafters. A tree limb had struck the plumbing vent and snapped the exposed upper section. Powdered snow blasted through the opening and spread across the insulation. Olivia appeared at the bottom of the ladder. "Damage?" "Vent stack. Roof framing is fine." "Can you seal it from inside?" "Yes." "I'll hold the light." I looked down at her. "There is loose fiberglass up here, and the temperature is dropping fast." "I heard you. You can wait by the stove." "I can also hold a lantern." She had already picked it up. I moved one rung down and stopped before she climbed. "Your choice," I said. "If you come up, stay on the ladder platform. Do not step into the attic." Understood. I went back to the vent. Olivia climbed only as far as I had told her and held the lantern above shoulder height. Amber light spread across the rafters while wind hissed through the broken pipe. I cut a short repair sleeve from spare PVC, fitted it over the damaged section, then wrapped the joint with cold-rated flashing tape. The first pass did not bond cleanly. Ice had formed on the plastic. "Lantern lower," I said. She adjusted instantly. I warmed the pipe with my gloved hands, dried it with a shop rag, and tried again. The tape sealed. The hiss stopped. Silence returned to the attic except for the distant storm. Done. Olivia lowered the lantern. Her fingers were shaking from the cold, but the beam had never wandered. "Anything else?" she asked. That was enough. Back in the great room, I fed 2 pieces of oak into the wood stove and opened the air control. Olivia stood near the heat while I checked the repair from below. "You were right about one thing," she said. "Only one?" "The mountain was going to make something inconvenient before Monday." I glanced at the stove. It may be saving the rest for later. She laughed again, quieter this time. By 9 that night, the battery bank had dropped into conservation mode. I shut off everything except the circulation fan, one charging outlet, and the small amber camping lantern on the coffee table. The unfinished great room cooled faster after dark. Olivia sat on the leather sofa with a wool blanket around her shoulders, trying to review her checklist while the cold cushions pulled warmth from her. She shifted twice in less than a minute. I opened the supply closet and took out a 0-degree sleeping bag. "May I put this on the sofa?" I asked. She looked up. "You're asking permission to move a sleeping bag?" "I'm asking permission to crowd your workspace." "Yes?" I unzipped it flat across the cushions, fleece side up. "The leather is working against you," I said. "Sit on this instead." She moved her papers, tried it, and let out a breath. "That is much better." I bill insulation advice separately. "I'm a state auditor. I reject unsupported invoices. Then I'll consider it a demonstration sample." She pulled the blanket back over her knees. "Caleb?" "Yes?" "Why black tea?" "It was what I had." "No. Why black coffee? You made a face when you saw the powdered creamer." "I did not make a face." "You absolutely made a face." I picked up my logbook. "I drink coffee black." "That explains the personality." I looked over. She was smiling into the rim of her mug. "I will put that in the audit response." "Please do. It may be your strongest finding." The wind hit the cabin again, hard enough to send a tremor through the glass. Olivia's hand stopped halfway to the table. I watched the beam above us, no movement, no sound from the joinery. "The frame is holding," I said. She followed my gaze. "You really trust it?" "I know how it was built." "That is not the same thing." "For timber, it is close." She set her mug down. "What about people?" I closed the logbook. "People do not come with load tables." "No, they come with supervisors named Grant." That pulled a short laugh out of me before I could stop it. The lantern made a small pool of light between us. Beyond it, the room disappeared into shadow. Olivia glanced at the satellite terminal on the table. "I need to invoke the weather delay protocol tonight," she said. "Not to extend the inspection deadline, to protect the record if the data upload fails tomorrow." "How does it work?" "I send a time-stamped notice before midnight stating that field access is restricted by an official. Weather emergency? The Phase 3 decision still has to be made by noon Sunday. But supporting documents can finish transmitting within 24 hours if the connection drops. That solves the network problem, not the audit." "Correct." She picked up the terminal. "So tomorrow morning, I inspect the loft connections you opened for me, verify the amendment against Marta Lynn's stamp, and make the decision before noon. And if you find a real violation, I write it." "And if you do not?" "I write that." The directness of her answer settled something in me more effectively than reassurance would have. "Send the notice," I said. "I'll pull Marta's field report and the revised snow load sheet while you do." The terminal took 4 attempts before the transmission icon turned green. Olivia exhaled and showed me the confirmation number. "Filed at 9:42 p.m. I wrote it in the margin of my logbook. She noticed. "You document everything, don't you?" "Almost everything." "What do you leave out?" I looked at her mug. "Tea reviews?" She smiled. "Coward?" At 2:30 in the morning, I woke to a second impact somewhere above the hallway. The repair held. A different branch had scraped across the roof and slid away without damage. I checked every accessible connection anyway. By the time I finished, the great room had fallen into the low 40s. The guest bedroom at the back of the cabin was the only finished room. Its walls were fully insulated, its door sealed properly, and the bed already had a winter quilt. I carried the lantern down the hall. "You take the bed," I told Olivia. "I have an expedition bag. I'll sleep on the rug by the door." She looked at the rug, then at the thermometer I had set on the nightstand. 39 degrees. The room will hold better once the door is shut. The floor is still the floor. I'll be fine. You said that about the attic. And you came down with ice in your beard. That is not a medical diagnosis. She sat on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed, and pulled the quilt around her shoulders. I unrolled the sleeping bag on the rug. The mattress creaked behind me. There's room, Olivia said. I turned. She had moved to the far side of the king-sized bed, leaving a wide stretch of untouched quilt between us. The mattress will insulate better than the floor, she added. We stay fully dressed. We stay on our own sides if either of us is uncomfortable. You go back to the rug. Agreed? Agreed. And this has nothing to do with the audit. Absolutely nothing. Good. I rolled the sleeping bag back up and set it by the door, then lay down on the opposite edge of the mattress. The distance between us was wide enough for another person. The lantern went off. Darkness covered the room. For several minutes, the only sound was the storm pushing against the cabin and the faint tick of the wood shrinking in the colder air. Caleb? Yes? Were you really going to sleep on that floor all night? Yes. Even after telling me the leather sofa was a heat sink? I was hoping you would not audit the inconsistency. A soft laugh came from the other side of the bed. Then silence returned. A few minutes later, Olivia spoke again. Grant has been building a case against me for months. I stayed still. He gives difficult assignments without support, then says I lack leadership if I push back. If I find violations, I'm aggressive. If I don't, I'm not thorough enough. The mattress shifted as she turned onto her side. I keep thinking if I make every report perfect, he will run out of ways to question me. I reached toward the nightstand, found the audit binder in the dark, and set it between us on top of the quilt. You caught the plan discrepancy in 3 minutes, I said. You verified the amendment instead of assuming it was wrong. You held the lantern exactly where I needed it. And you filed the weather notice before the transmission window closed. I tapped the binder once. That is evidence. Use it tomorrow. She was quiet for a moment. Very romantic. I'm not trying to be romantic. I know. That was the point when her voice softened. Thank you. You're welcome. I left the binder where it was, a hard rectangular line between our sides of the bed, and listened until her breathing evened out. Sunday morning arrived without sunrise. The windows stayed white. By 7, the wood stove was drawing cleanly again, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the great room. Olivia stood at the counter holding a chipped enamel mug. She took one sip and looked at me. This is terrible. It is black. That is not the same as good. I never claimed good. You implied competence. In timber. Convenient limitation. The coffee was instant emergency ration powder, but it was hot. And for 5 quiet minutes, the storm became background noise instead of an enemy. At 8, we resumed the audit. I opened the upper loft access panels from inside the cabin, and Olivia inspected every connection affected by the roof pitch amendment. She checked Marta Lynn's stamped revision against the physical framing, measured post placement, photographed the collar ties, and recorded the ridge support numbers. At 10:15, she stopped at the last exposed connection. Hand me your caliper. I passed it over. She measured the steel pin, checked the schedule, then measured again. Well, I asked. Correct diameter. Disappointing? Deeply. She wrote the number on her form. At 11:03, Olivia placed the completed Phase 3 checklist on the kitchen island. Structural work passes. I did not reach for the page. You're certain? I am. The deadline? 57 minutes away. She signed the determination, added the weather delay reference number for the supporting upload, and showed me the timestamp. Your permit does not lapse, she said. This decision is effective now. The image packet and attachments can finish uploading under the emergency protocol, but the inspection itself is closed before noon. Only then did I take the copy she offered. The paper made a dry whisper against my gloves. Thank you for the fair inspection. Thank you for giving me a cabin worth approving. At 11:20, Her satellite terminal found enough signal to send the signed decision. The confirmation arrived 3 minutes later. For exactly 6 minutes, nothing went wrong. Then the generator shed began to fail. The sound came through the storm as a long metallic pop followed by the groan of timber under. Compression. I crossed to the east window and cleared a patch of frost with my sleeve. The temporary shed stood 50 yards from the cabin. Its corrugated roof had sagged in the middle under a drift that had doubled in less than an hour. "The center beam is going," I said. Olivia came to the window. "If it collapses, it crushes the generator and fuel cells. The cabin stays safe. But we lose emergency power and charging." "Can it wait?" "No." I pulled on my jacket and clipped a safety line to my harness. Olivia's hand tightened around her mug. "Visibility is worse than last night. I know the distance. I'll stay on the guideline from the rear post." "What do you need me to do?" "Lock the door after me. Keep the radio on channel 3. If I don't call in 10 minutes, call NOAA on the satellite terminal and then County Rescue Dispatch. Do not come after me." She held my gaze. 10 minutes. 10. I stepped into the storm. Snow hit my face like thrown sand. The safety line stayed taut between my harness and the rear post while I worked toward the shed by feel. I found the wall with my shoulder, forced the door open, and saw the center beam bowed under the load. The hydraulic jack was already stored inside. I set it beneath the beam, pumped until the steel plate made contact, then raised the sag one careful fraction at a time. The roof protested above me. 1 minute. 2. I drove a temporary brace beside the jack and secured it with structural screws. At 6 minutes, the radio crackled. "Caleb?" Olivia's voice. "I'm here." "Status?" "Beam is supported. 2 more minutes." "Copy." No panic, no extra words. I finished the brace, checked the generator housing for impact, then made my way back along the line. When I knocked 3 times, the door opened at once. Olivia moved aside so I could enter without crowding me, then shut and locked the door behind us. 8 minutes 40 seconds, she said. I pulled ice from my glove cuff. "You timed me?" "I audit things." "Of course you do." She handed me a towel warmed near the stove. That was the first thing she had done for me that had nothing to do with inspection procedure. I took it. "Thank you." "Demonstration sample," she said. The callback caught me off guard enough that I laughed. For lunch, we split a packet of soup and ate it standing near the wood stove, because the counter stools were still colder than the room. The relief lasted until Olivia opened the generator shed section of the site plan. Her expression changed. "Caleb." I looked over. She turned the page toward me. "Grant can use this." My pencil stopped against the logbook. "The shed is temporary construction storage." "I know." "It is outside the Phase 3 residential inspection." "I know that too." "Then what can he use?" "He can claim the temporary structure. Failure demonstrates inadequate site safety management and order a separate review." My grip tightened around the pencil until the wood pressed into my fingertips. "The roof did not fail. I braced it before collapse." "I am not accusing you." "He will." "Yes." The stove fan clicked to a lower speed. For a second, that small mechanical sound was the loudest thing in the room. Olivia folded her arms. "If Grant sees a photograph of a sagging shed without context, he will try to reopen everything. And if we hide it, he will have a real reason." "I did not say hide it." Her voice sharpened. "I am trying to stop him from turning a temporary weather event into a professional weapon. That, and I'm trying to stop a supervisor in an office from inventing a structural problem on a Site E. Has never seen..." The words came out harder than I intended. Olivia's jaw set. "Then do not aim that frustration at me." Silence. The pencil was still in my fist. I set it down. She was right. Instead of answering, I pulled a sheet of grid paper from the drawer and laid it flat between us. "Fine," I said. "We document before he asks." Olivia's shoulders dropped a fraction. I wrote 3 lines. First, original site plan showing temporary classification. Second, weather data proving the snow load exceeded the shed's temporary rating. Third, repair record with time, method, and photographs. Olivia reached for the pencil. Fourth, explicit statement that the primary residence showed no corresponding structural distress under the same event. Good. Fifth, Marta Lynn's contact and original note distinguishing temporary from permanent structures. Better. The argument turned into a plan in less than a minute. Olivia opened the satellite terminal. I can file this as a supplemental incident addendum to the closed audit. If dispatch accepts the timestamp before Grant tries to issue anything, he cannot alter the Phase 3 decision without a separate written technical basis. Can he still order a site safety review? Yes, but that review would have to address the shed on its own classification. He cannot retroactively turn it into a failed residential inspection. Send it. She started typing. I photographed the temporary brace, the intact generator, the site plan designation, and the main cabin exterior from the protected porch. Then I pulled the weather station log from the local monitor mounted under the eave. Olivia assembled the packet line by line. At 2:18 p.m., the first upload failed. At 2:24, the second failed. At 2:31, a narrow break opened in the cloud cover west of the ridge. The terminal found a signal. Olivia hit transmit. We both watched the progress bar crawl across the small screen. 10%, 32, 68. The signal indicator flickered. 91, she said. The bar stopped. Neither of us moved. Then the screen flashed green. Supplemental addendum accepted. A second line appeared beneath it. Phase 3, determination locked. Technical override requires director review. Olivia stared at the message, then handed me the terminal. There, she said. He can challenge me. He cannot quietly rewrite me? I looked from the screen to the grid paper covered in both our handwriting. Good work. So your praise vocabulary is 2 words long. 3, if warranted. What is the third? I put the terminal down. Very. She laughed hard enough to cover her mouth. The sound changed the cabin more than the fire did. Sunday evening passed without another structural emergency. Noah finally got a short satellite text through from the lower valley. Road closed, crew safe, found duplicate of Marta amendment in office. Want me to send? I showed Olivia. Send it, she said. Redundancy helps. I replied. Noah's copy arrived 40 minutes later, complete with the original county routing number. Olivia attached it to the addendum, closing the last documentary gap Grant could question. Your foreman keeps better files than some agencies, she said. Do not tell him. He will become impossible. I am legally required to report excellence. Then I withdraw the compliment. By 10, the storm weakened enough that we could hear individual gusts instead of one continuous roar. We took our mugs to the edge of the great room and stood beneath the exposed beams. Olivia ran her fingertips over the smooth face of a Douglas fir post. No steel plate, she said. Not where I can avoid one. You really believe the joint is stronger this way? I can show you the shear numbers. She looked at me. I was not asking for the numbers. I understood that a second late. The silence between us changed, but neither of us closed the distance. Olivia lifted her mug instead. To structures that survive inspection. I touched mine lightly against hers. To inspectors who read amendments. Monday morning came blue and painfully bright. The storm had scrubbed the sky clean. Snow rose nearly to the lower window trim, and the pines stood loaded in white silence. At 7:10, the county dispatcher reached Olivia's terminal. Plow entering upper access. ETA Ridge, 60 to 90 minutes. Recovery truck following. No magic rescue, just machinery finally arriving on the schedule we had hoped for. Olivia read the message twice. Looks like Monday 1. Barely. I shoveled the porch while she packed her folio. At 8, another message came through. This one carried Grant Mercer's name. Call me immediately. Your report is under review. Olivia stared at it. Then she did not call him. Instead, she opened the accepted addendum, selected the compliance routing address for the senior director, attached Grant's earlier written instruction demanding a material violation, and added a short note requesting formal review under the agency's non-retaliation procedure. She showed me the draft before sending. "This is not about the promotion anymore," she said. "I want the instruction on record before he decides what version of yesterday he prefers." "What happens after you send it?" "The director reviews the audit, the override request, and Grant's messages. Until that review is complete, he cannot alter the signed determination himself." "And your job?" "The non-retaliation policy applies once the complaint is logged." I nodded toward the screen. "Then log it." She pressed send. The confirmation arrived before the plow reached the lower bend. Olivia put the terminal back in her bag. "That is the first time I have ever filed something against him." "How does it feel?" She considered the question. "Like paperwork." I smiled. "That I understand." The plow appeared through the trees just after 9, yellow blade flashing between banks of snow. The recovery truck followed behind it. Olivia stood on the cleared porch with her folio under one arm. I handed her the signed site copy. "Permit?" I asked. "Active, Phase 3 past Sunday at 11:03. Addendum accepted. Grant cannot reverse either without written director-level findings." "Your complaint?" "Logged." She tucked the copy into her bag. For a moment, neither of us had another practical problem to solve. That was unfamiliar territory. "I'm at the architectural office downtown on Thursdays," I said. "Usually after 3. Olivia looked at me. "There is a coffee place across the street." "The terrible kind?" "No, the real kind." She reached into her folio, pulled out a business card, and wrote something on the back. Then she stepped forward and put it in my gloved hand. "Thursday, 4:30. Underneath, she added one more line. "I'm buying black." "You are not allowed to inspect the coffee before I get there," I said. "That would be irresponsible." "Olivia." She smiled. "I'll see you Thursday, Caleb." That was not an implication. It was a decision. The recovery driver waved from the road, and Olivia headed down the shoveled path toward him. At the bottom of the steps, she turned back once. "Your shed brace?" "Temporary." "Good. I expect a permanent repair before the next storm." "There she is." She laughed and kept walking. "Thursday at 4:26. I was at the downtown office reviewing lumber invoices with Noah when the glass door opened." Olivia walked in carrying 2 paper cups. No snow, no parka, no emergency folio, just coffee. Noah looked from her to me and raised one eyebrow. I ignored him. Olivia crossed the office and set 1 cup beside my manifest. "Black," she said. I checked. I lifted the lid and smelled actual roasted coffee instead of emergency powder. "This may be your best inspection yet." "Careful, I brought documentation." She placed her phone on the desk and showed me an email from the senior director. The Phase 3 audit had been upheld without modification. Grant's attempted override had been rejected for lack of technical basis. The agency had opened a formal review of his written instruction to manufacture a finding, and Olivia's position was protected while that review proceeded. Noah read only enough of the subject line to understand the result. "Congratulations," he said. "Thank you," Olivia replied. Then she looked at me. "And since your permit is active, your shed is documented, my report is locked, and neither of us is currently trapped by a mountain. I have a question." I closed the manifest. "All right. Dinner after you finish this?" Noah suddenly became very interested in a stack of invoices on the other side of the room. I picked up the coffee she had brought me. "Yes." Olivia smiled and took the chair beside my desk instead of the one across from it. Outside the office windows, city traffic moved through a cold, clear evening. Inside, the old timber sample mounted on the wall gave a soft, dry click as the heat came on. The sound reminded me of the cabin after the storm, wood settling into the shape it had been built to hold. This time, I did not need a load table to understand what came next. The end. Closing thoughts. Caleb and Olivia moved forward because each of them kept choosing clear action over pressure, fear, or assumption. The green flag was simple. Boundaries were respected, competence was trusted, and promises were backed by what they actually did. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.